This week on The Record, President Biden's student loan debt relief is back on as a judge kicks Attorney General Andrew Bailey's suit out of federal court and down to Missouri. Voters could give more than 1 million Missouri workers a pay raise at the ballot box. How inflation politics could impact the minimum wage amendment question, and who would pay for the added cost of businesses. Plus, who controls the state's investments? The man running against the incumbent state treasurer is on the record. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. With the election so close now, we're taking a closer look at some of the big races on your ballot coming up soon. Missouri voters will elect a new state treasurer in November. Republican Governor Mike Parson appointed incumbent Vivek Malik to his role at the end of 2022 to fill out about half of a full 4-year term. Malik faces a challenge from Democrat Mark Maxwell, who recently joined us on The Record. Mark Maxwell, thanks for joining us here on your campaign. Just a quick question to start off. Why should voters care about the office of the state treasurer and the function of that job?
So a lot of people think that it's an automatic green light for approving the state's funds, but much more goes through the office, and there's a lot more leeway than people might anticipate. Unclaimed property is probably the most public-facing side of the treasurer's office, but there's a lot more to it than that. So one thing I think we can improve upon unclaimed property is currently the onus is on the individual to find out if the state has owed them money. Or does owe them money.
You have to go looking for your
You have to go looking for it. So if you have a unique name, that might be a little bit easier. But if you have a more common name, that becomes more difficult. But I think there's a better way to do it. One, the state can notify you. And two, whenever you file your state taxes, I think the state should have, say, hey, if you owe us $52.13, there should be a bucket saying, oh, by the way, we also have $26 unclaimed property. Would you like to apply that?
Are you saying you have to go looking for each item?
No, it's all open. Like if you type your name John Smith, it'll be itemized, 13 cents, $12. But you have to go request each one individually. But you typically don't know that you are owed money by the state.
And you may not know that you had an investment account that foreclosed, or all kinds of different ways. People can have little traces of money they may not even know is just sitting there.
That is correct.
There's also billions of dollars in the portfolio of the state of Missouri, and the treasurer oversees a lot of those investment decisions. The incumbent, Mr. Malik, has talked a lot about stopping a woke investment agenda. How do you understand that idea? I
think that is something to distract voters from what really does matter. And so, unfortunately, I don't think our state is headed in the right direction for the past 20 years of one-party rule. So typically, unfortunately, the other side, the Republican Party is focused on terms like CRT, DEI, wokeism, to distract people from what are the real challenges of Missouri are. Namely, in this sense, schools that are struggling. A lot of them are going to 4 out of 5 days a week in rural areas. Teachers' pay is one among the lowest in the nation. When it comes to investing, because of how I was raised, and that was in a poor family that moved around a lot, my principle and my plan for investing the state's funding and state's money, which is the people's money, is in a conservative way and is something that is reliable and steadfast and as risk-averse as possible.
Oh, okay, so we're getting to some policy here. So some conservative investments, meaning just what's off the table? So
off the table, I'm making this up, but Bitcoin, anything that's a flash in the pan,
volatile, yeah.
Exactly. That is something that I would not want to do. But when Mr. Malik talks about not investing in wokeism, that is just meant to distract people from the current issues that the state has.
Yes and no. There are some state treasurers in this country that do try to invest with a conscience. At what point would your moral compass come into play?
Moral compass always comes into play, and the way that for me, if I cannot explain it to my daughters, I have two, then I would not do it. And so I apply that to every single part of my life. So
when you say that, I just want to make sure I'm being specific. If you couldn't explain the investment decision to your daughters,
or to if company X or bank Y is objectionable, if I cannot explain that to my daughters, then that is something that I would not do.
Can you give us an idea of something that you would find objectionable?
Sure. I think the most obvious ones are anything. There's a federal policy that it's called Never Contract with the Enemy, and so those are prohibiting deals with Russia, with Iran, with any other adversary of the United States. So I think those would be the obvious choices. But other ones would be bad actors, either in Missouri or nationally, in terms of investment. So that are been very detrimental either to the environment or to people writ large.
Fossil fuels?
Fossil fuels, well, yes, it depends, but fossil fuels would be one that would require a closer look, because the nation is transitioning, and the market, the invisible hand, is the one that's deciding, hey, this is something that we want to find another way to keep our energy going.
Private prisons?
No, I would not invest in private prisons.
Weapons manufacturers?
No, I would not invest in weapons manufacturers.
Boeing is a big jobs hub here in St. Louis.
Boeing, when I think weapons, I think of typically guns, that type of thing, but I understand that Boeing's platform is much wider than just fighter planes. It is commercial as well.
I want to circle back to what you said about national adversaries because it gets a little bit complicated. I don't know that states and state executives are the best place for foreign diplomacy if they're the tip of the spear. But you're right, the State Department has sanctions on a number of different countries. China is one of them, sort of. I think the current policy is that they are a competitor, but we're not calling them an enemy. They're an adversary, not an enemy. I don't know how you really shade that difference there, but the sanctions that exist are on Chinese military companies. Would you apply any other restrictions on Missouri investments going to non-military Chinese entities?
So a good example of our trade partnership with China is as follows. One, that Missouri pork is some of the most sought after in the world, and China is one of the major purchasers of Missouri pork. Specifically, there is a part of the pig that only one country buys. Now, we sell pork to Canada, to Mexico, to Europe, different countries in Europe, but also to China. And one part of the pig that is only sold and sought after by Chinese is the pig anus, and that goes for about $1.50 individually. So if we cut off trading partnership or trading ties with China, we are telling every single pig farmer in Missouri that you're going to have to find that extra $1.50 somewhere else.
You don't want to block a buyer from the farmers, but I don't know, would you be doing that if you just said we're not going to invest there? That's different than trading.
Correct. So no, but it's setting a template, it's setting a tone of what kind of relationship that I think we can have. So,
and you're suggesting that could be a retaliatory effect. If you say these funds will not be invested there any longer, that could be one of the things.
That's correct. Oh, but I do want to protect Missouri farmers, and that is just, as strange as it sounds, that is a part that is purchased by them.
In the little time we have left, I want to focus on education because the Treasurer's Office oversees the tax credit program, the Education Savings Account program, that allows some companies or some donors to give money to this pot, and then some private school, kids can go to private schools and tap into those funds to pay for it. I think I've read that you want to end this program?
That's correct.
Now, you wouldn't have any power to do that legislatively. How would you do that as treasurer?
So every request for school vouchers goes through the Treasurer's Office. And so that is something that, true, if we do not...
So you would just deny them all outright?
I would do what I can to stop them, yes.
Or would you use the power of the office to scrutinize the application of those funds or the people who want to tap into those funds and then under its own weight, hope that it falls?
Correct, both. So whatever works. I will try a multifaceted approach to make sure that public schools receive all the public money that is possible, that is due to them. I think every single time that we invest or any dollar that's invested outside of that is detrimental to public schools, to include this program, to include the school voucher program writ large.
And why? Because if a family pays money, property taxes, otherwise, income taxes of the state of Missouri, and they object to they have a preference that their kids should go to a school of their choice. Should they have that choice?
They have that choice now. They have that choice to go to private school. That is correct.
But they're paying taxes.
They are paying taxes. But I do everything I can to use the office to protect Missouri public schools, which is not happening now. Right? What the Republicans are trying to do is privatize public schools in Missouri, carte blanche.
Mark Maxwell, running for treasurer as a Democrat. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Two senior senators visited the St. Louis region this week, and together their experience and their sides of the story shed important light on two key pieces of Senator Josh Hawley's record as he runs for re-election in Missouri. Out on the campaign trail, Hawley is claiming credit for securing $100 million in federal funding for Army housing at Fort Leonard Wood, despite voting to block the bill that paid for it. Hawley points to his words in letters to Pentagon brass or in Senate hearings where he pounds the table and pressures generals to move money around inside their budgets the way he wants them to. But online, Hawley distracts from his actions, even writing online incorrectly, quote, "There was no vote." Well, we checked the record. There was, in fact, a vote. He voted no. And as Senator Dick Durbin told us, when politicians do that sort of thing, their colleagues on Capitol Hill take notice.
Take credit for whatever you wish, but the record speaks for itself. If he really believed in a project, he should not only introduce it, but he ought to vote for it. If you can't vote for the project, I've said as appropriation chairman, don't ask for anything in the bill because you won't be getting anything in the future.
Now, important context. Hawley claims he voted against the military spending bill because compensation benefits for victims of radiation exposure were stripped out. But he's the one who tried to put that separate bill in as an amendment. Republican Senator Roger Wicker said Congress will redraft a new version of RECA after the new Congress is sworn in.
That is an issue that will be resolved in the next Congress. It's not something that the House of Representatives is going to take up this year. I think a better solution to that would be to tailor it more precisely, and also, of course, we have our differences among ourselves, but it did amount to billions of dollars of mandatory spending, which we have to worry about when we're talking about the budget problems. I think there's a way to make it more targeted and to give relief to people who need it without the huge budget impact, and that's what I'm striving for.
Does it belong in the NDAA?
I would rather it not be in the NDAA. There is a tendency to to use the one bill that's moving as a catch-all vehicle for a number of things.
President Biden's student loan debt relief plan is back on. A judge kicked Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey's lawsuit out of federal court and back down to Missouri, clearing the way for the federal government to start slashing loan repayments and canceling debt faster for millions of borrowers. What would happen to Illinois sports books if Missouri voters legalized sports betting here? Reporters asked Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Thursday.
Folks here in Illinois are using Illinois-based apps and companies that do business in Illinois. I think that, again, the companies themselves would frankly suffer if they decide to go across state lines. And there's betting in Indiana, just to give you an idea. I mean, so it hasn't happened. Companies are not getting up and leaving, as a result of the change in the tax code.
Pritzker stopped in the St. Louis area in the week promoting these EV charging stations you see there. They're being installed at state parks across Illinois. We're back in a minute. Welcome back. Missouri voters will soon decide the future of the state's economy and its wage floor. The minimum wage up for a vote, also guaranteed paid sick leave. Joining us now is the campaign manager of Prop A, which basically is asking voters whether or not you want to raise the minimum wage in Missouri to $15 an hour over the next 2 years and guarantee paid sick leave, roughly a week to workers over the course of a year of paid sick leave. How many workers right now, Richard Von Glahn.
Yeah.
Got to give a guy his name there.
Thanks.
How many workers do you think in the state of Missouri right now don't have that benefit of guaranteed sick leave?
Yeah, estimates are that as many as 1 in 3 Missouri workers don't have access to paid sick leave. They tend to be in frontline positions, construction workers, retail workers, childcare, nursing home workers, people that really drive our economy, and they often don't have access to paid sick leave.
A lot of the economists that look at tariffs and trade war and all these different things that are happening, it does shift the economy. During the pandemic, we saw this closer to a service industry economy where service workers, service unions are often taking on a larger share of the overall gross domestic product in this country.
Certainly, we have seen the critical role that a lot of those employees play in our economy. We've spent the last couple of years calling them essential. We think they are essential. We think their family members are essential too. And it's important that they have the same benefits that oftentimes executives and CEOs have.
Who would oppose an idea like this?
I don't really know who would actually oppose to this. Most businesses want to have a healthy workforce. Most customers want to know that when you show up to a place of business that the workforce is well taken care of and is healthy. So guaranteed paid time off is something that 19 states have already done, and we're looking forward to Missouri joining the list.
Illinois next door did this through the legislature. Was there an effort on that front?
There hasn't been a lot of effort with the legislature when we've filed bills to try to enact improvements of worker compensation in different pieces. The legislature doesn't usually schedule them for a hearing.
Why do you suspect that is?
I think members of the Missouri legislature have different priorities than improving working conditions for a majority of Missouri's workers.
We look at the campaign between now, there's just a handful of weeks, 4 or 5 weeks until voters actually decide all this. The minimum wage question, Missouri voters have kind of weighed in on this before. If voters should approve this, is there anything the legislature can do to trip up its implementation between now and when paychecks start getting bigger?
So it is a statutory proposal. If voters approve it in November, the first increase up to $13.75 will take place on January 1st of 2025. That's before the legislature comes into session. Paid sick leave would be implemented subsequently on May 1st of 2025, and then the minimum wage would increase January 1, 2026. So the legislature would have time to meet and file bills, but we would expect that the legislature should uphold the will of Missouri voters.
How do you address this idea that if we raise the wage floor, that ultimately the businesses who pay those wages are going to have to make up that cost somewhere? And we've heard, for example, Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, who's running for governor, say, well, that cost, or some of it, is going to be passed back on to the consumer, or might end up in businesses who just say, we can't afford to hire that next new recruit.
Yeah, so currently the minimum wage for Missouri workers, for someone working full-time, 40 hours a week, amounts to just $492 a week. That is not enough to survive on anywhere in the economy. And we know that really what drives economic growth in the state are workers. When workers are fairly compensated, we turn around and we spend that money right back in our economy. You know, we get the car repair that maybe we've been delaying, or maybe we can afford an extra meal out. So that's really what drives a consumer-driven economy, is having consumers that are able to spend. So Proposition A would inject over $609 million right back into workers' paychecks, who will turn around and spend that in our economy, driving economic growth. That's why we've seen over 475, particularly small businesses, endorse this initiative, because they know that more money in the economy means more consumers for them, more growth. This question might sound kind of blunt, but if workers at the bottom of the pay scale are making more, is there someone making less, or is there a third option? I think not necessarily. When we really think about what drives the economy and doing different pieces, when you have a more balanced economy, when workers at the low end are making more, and maybe it does mean a little bit less at the very high end, but what you see is that can actually really drive growth and have more in there. There's only so many hamburgers or cups of coffee that one individual can consume. And so when you have more people able to do that, it really drives growth for the entire state.
In this period of hyperinflation that we've seen, I know it's cooling off, but goods have costed more. It's cost a lot more to borrow money over the last 4 years at different rates. But how has that inflation pressure coupled up with your cause?
I mean, it makes things even harder for people. When you're living check to check, and milk goes up or eggs go up, that makes it all the more critical to actually make sure that wages are going up along with that. Like I said, $492 a week for someone who is working full time. This isn't somebody working 20 hours a week. This is a full-time worker. The American dream is really that if you work hard, you deserve better than poverty. But right now we have too many hardworking people who are not getting wages that allow them to sustain themselves and their family. You couple that with the fact that many of them, if they get sick or a family member is sick, have to face, taking a day off to heal means losing a paycheck that you desperately can't afford to lose.
Richard Von Glahn, thanks for joining us and laying out your vision for the future. This ballot question, which voters will take on November 5th, a Tuesday night coming soon. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you.
We're back in a moment. One big question hovering over this November election and the upcoming inauguration: will Donald Trump ever face criminal consequence for trying to block the peaceful transfer of power? Will he see his day in court? Let's check the record, which now includes new evidence. Special counsel Jack Smith filed a 165-page legal brief, now unsealed and partly redacted. It tells the federal courts if this case goes to trial, Smith has Trump's former director of Oval Office operations ready to testify that Trump suggested he would fight to remain in power regardless of whether he had won the election. Direct quote. FBI experts would testify about how Trump used his cell phone when he tweeted attacks at his running mate, Mike Pence. The court filing called that, quote, the message of an angry candidate upon the realization that he would lose power. Why did Trump insert himself into a process that belongs only to Congress? The court filing says, quote, to advance his own self-interest and perpetuate himself in power, contrary to the will of the people. An unnamed White House aide, according to that filing, ran to Trump when he received a phone call that Pence had been taken to a secure location, quote, in hopes that Trump would take action to ensure Pence's safety. Trump, according to prosecutors, looked at the aide and simply said, "So what?" That's all of our time. We'll see you here at the same time next week. Until then, we're off the record.